Welcome to the Tuesday edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Great to be with you again today. Well, folks, we are counting down to our Stand Awards dinner. That's going to be happening on May the 16th. What's this, the 29th? That means this April 29th. That means we are exactly, 18 days, right? 18 days from the dinner. So a little less now, about 3 days short of 3 weeks, about 2.5 weeks, and we will be there. So if you'd like to come and you haven't already purchased a ticket, you can get complimentary tickets. We have complimentary tickets available until we run out, and they are running out, but we do have tickets available. We can still offer up to 4 per family. More than that, you have to consult with us and see where we are. But husbands and wives, spouses, two tickets, no problem. Tickets are $150, so this is of significant value, folks. But because of the generosity of our sponsors, we're able to do this. Obviously, we can't reach into the stand budget and do that, but our sponsors have made it possible because many of them, as I've explained before, are from way out of, all over the country, frankly. And there's no way in the world we can, that they can all come from various places from around the country to get here, California and Louisiana and Texas and so forth. There's just, no way. We do have some coming from other parts of the country, but obviously a lot of them can't come. They just say, look, you fill my table with friends or with people who would like to come but might not be able to afford $150 a plate dinner. So you all are invited to be there. Our honorees again, Tina Descovich. I see Tina all the time on Fox, praise God. Kevin Freeman, Walter Hoy, Stacy Washington, Robert L. Woodson. Great patriots. We'll be giving them the George Washington Award for taking a stand. By the way, I don't mean to imply by offering complimentary tickets that we don't still need support and we aren't still willing to accept it. If you want to, you say, look, I don't want a complimentary ticket, but want to help you. There are all kinds of ways to do that. You can donate any amount. You can buy tickets that we can donate if you'd like to do that. At this late stage, probably trying to recruit somebody to fill your ticket is probably not something we'll be able to do. But if you want to donate, you can do that. You want to sponsor a table, $1,500 to sponsor a table. Sponsorships begin at $2,000, go all the way up to $100,000 matching gift. We've had that in the past. Don't have that matching gift person yet, but I'm hoping that we will have someone who will match us. So in other words, if we raise $100,000 on the dinner, that they will give us $100,000. And that is the way this dinner really helps to satisfy our budget. We are not an organization with millions and millions of dollars to spend like some of these organizations have, apparently. And we're believing God for that. But in the meantime, we solicit your prayers for God to take us where he wants us to go. Stand is the only organization in America that is committed to bringing Americans together across racial and cultural lines to uphold our Judeo-Christian values and principles. There are a lot of wonderful conservative organizations around, but they're not doing that, okay? Some of them, maybe they touch that issue from time to time, tangentially, but that is not their primary mission. It is ours. That's why if you notice our honorees, this is not by engineering. This is because we have connections to a variety of different communities, and we don't want to be one-dimensional. So we honor people from all kinds of backgrounds. And as you can see, we're not a black organization. We're not a white organization. We're a conservative organization that is committed to bridging the racial divide that the left is trying to create in our country. So you want to support something that's unique, that's different. We're not the same as the Family Research Council or Turning Point USA or Heritage. We're doing something very, very different what those organizations are doing. Excuse me. But we are a conservative organization committed to upholding Judeo-Christian values, constitutional principles, free markets, limited government, and so forth. So one of our big projects, for example, that we've just launched in the last year, and we're still sort of developing it, getting it off the ground, is the Family Restoration Institute. Family Restoration Institute is committed to restoring, to strengthening and restoring the family in America as God designed it. Strengthening, restoring the family in America as God designed it. And you all know we have a major problem with the breakdown of the family. It is most acute in the black community, but it is across the board. In 1950, Americans of European ancestry had a 3% out of wedlock birth rate, 3% in 1950. That means among, if you put them all together, among people of German ancestry, of Irish ancestry, of Italian ancestry, of Spanish ancestry, I mean like from Spain, French ancestry, and it's really the primary minorities that, the primary ethnicities that came to our country, that populated our country, were British, Irish, in this order actually, British, German, probably before the Irish, not as many Germans as Irish, but British, German, Irish, Italian, and then we have, of course, a smattering of French and Spanish people, because the French and the Spanish also tried to colonize this continent. They failed to do so, and the British ultimately prevailed. So we are really, our pedigree, our roots are in Great Britain rather than Spain or France, although Spain and France, Germany didn't really develop any real colonial presence here, but Germans did come here. And you see that reflected in the various German towns around our country and so forth. And of course, Africans, who came first in 1619 as indentured servants, and then of course later as the African slave trade really took off, more and more came here. By 1860, about 4 million Africans in our country at that point, and a very significant minority, and in fact a majority in some states at that point. So America is really a unique place, and it is worth preserving. And our organization is committed to preserving this place by bringing unity, one nation under God. That's the only way we're going to have liberty and justice for all. So we invite your prayers and your support, because we believe that Jesus said, we know Jesus said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. He didn't say it might not stand. He didn't say there's a possibility it won't stand. He said it cannot. He said every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. And a house divided against itself cannot stand. That means if the left succeeds in dividing us, slicing us, dicing us, pitting us against each other, along racial lines or gender lines or whatever lines they can find, because they're always trying to find some, it portends the end of America as we know it. And we're fighting to make sure that that does not happen. So help us. Help us. I mentioned the Family Research Institute. We got some other things growing out of that. Now remember, that grew out of the Forgotten Children Project, America's Forgotten Children. All these children, nearly 700 now across America, who've died since the George Floyd incident, and the Defund the Police movement began out of that, and crime spiked, and the victims ignored, frankly, for the most part, are the children who are being murdered in the streets of these cities. And so we've been pointing that out now for several years, 5 years to be exact. I think we may have started that maybe 4 years. We might have started that the year after the process began, and I began to look at it and analyze it, and that's when we launched America's Forgotten Children. But out of that has now grown the Family Restoration Institute, because we realized that the biggest problem that we are confronting is not law enforcement, although that is a major problem. We've got to make sure that law enforcement is fully staffed and properly trained and out there doing their job, because without them, we are, as we can see, it's chaos. It's chaos without them. And them doing their job as law enforcement officers, not as sycophants and servants to some idiot mayor or police chief who is imbued with a whole bunch of DEI nonsense and a whole bunch of leftist Marxist ideology, who thinks that crime is really just a symptom of the injustice of society, and therefore doesn't want to lock up people for committing crimes. They want to go out and placate them and let them go and send them into the streets. Now, most police officers are not like that, but some of these leaders are. And they want the police to reflect that. Or they don't want the police cooperating with ICE because somehow it's unjust to arrest illegal aliens and send them back to where they came from. Oh, that's terrible. We can't do that. It's insane. Help us to help save America. StandAmerica.us is the website. Go to StandAmerica.us. We're believing God for our first $1 million donor, somebody who's going to help really put us on the map and launch our organization to the next level. And so you be praying for us that the Lord will provide the support that we need. Okay. So covered that and covered the dinner and more than that. And by the way, if you're not on our email list, go to StandAmerica.us, sign up, and you will receive our emails. We've got a National Awakening Coalition conference call today. My son is going to be doing the call. He's our guest speaker today. He and his wife have two organizations, Mission Ready Men, or Seven Armies, it's also called, and Carry Girl, which is Carry Girl was designed initially to help women to defend themselves, primarily through carrying firearms. It is now sort of a Christian organization that advances the gospel of Jesus Christ and also encourages women to be capable of defending themselves and their families and so forth. Now, the companion organization of that is Mission Ready Men, which is Christian men doing the same thing. Now, of course, their businesses, Mission Ready Men is kind of a business and ministry. But they'll sell products, obviously, to anybody. They don't sell firearms, but they'll sell products to anybody. So go to the website, Mission Ready Men or Carry Girl, and you'll see some of the products that they have to offer. Well, my son is going to be talking primarily about the future of the Second Amendment on our National Awakening Coalition conference call today. So I encourage you to join in with that, too. For the telephone number, go to StandAmerica.us and when you click on projects, I'm pretty sure it's under projects, click on NAC or National Awakening Coalition Conference Call, NACC, and you'll get the telephone number. Might even be on the home page of the website. You won't have any trouble finding it. And then call in. It's a one number call. You don't have to put in any code. You just dial the number and you're in on the call. And we also have questions and comments, so you'll have an opportunity to do that as well. Okay. I have been saying that the Democrat Party, I'm calling it the Democrat Party, has now become a demonic cult. Here's the latest. We should not be shocked, but here's the latest. The Democrat Party has actually met, their top leaders have now strategized and determined that the way to reach the American people, the way to gain a new lease on life, is to now use more profanity in all of their speeches. Now, once again, folks, this is one of those instances where I say something and I'm thinking to myself, if I didn't know it to be true, and somebody said that to me, and I didn't have full confidence in the person saying, I say, you got it. He's making that up. He's making that up. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Nobody is going to sit around in politics and say, how do we reach the American people? How do we connect with them? I know. Let's use more profanity. Let's drop the F-bomb more. Let's just let her rip. That way we'll show we're real to the American people. You know what? I wish I were making that up. I really do. Because it is so sick. First of all, it tells you what they think of the American people. They think of the American people as being so stupid and so vacuous that the way to reach them is to drop F-bombs and use profanity. That's the mindset of the American people. And when you do that, that's my person. I love that. That's what they think. So that's the first point. It just confirms again that they have a very, very low opinion of the American people and our ability to analyze and think and decide rationally what is good for us and right for us. They have often used emotions and feelings as a substitute for facts and logic and information and truth. Now they're going to use profanity as I guess their ultimate tool of emotional manipulation. So basically, you drop the F-bomb 10 times in your speech, and you leave people so shocked that they can't think through the issues. Because they keep throwing around this stuff that, Donald Trump is violating the Constitution, Donald Trump is doing this, but they never give any facts to show you exactly how that is true. Look, I would argue they're making a big deal about his deporting all of these criminal, illegal aliens. I would argue that none of these people is entitled to due process. If you come into the country illegally, you don't need due process to kick you out. They should be able to find you and send you packing, period. Now, of course, they've got to verify that you're the person they're looking for. They've got to verify that you're not a citizen of the United States. But in terms of due process hearing, you didn't come here through a hearing. Why do you need one to leave? And I said that's the equivalent of somebody breaking into my home. And when I call the police and they show up, they say to the person, they say to me, well, you can't just kick them out. Well, why not? Because they're entitled to due process. Well, they didn't use due process to get in here. I mean, of course, that's absurd. Nobody thinks that. I think it's just as absurd to think that you bum rush our country, you invade our country, you just crash our borders. But now we've got to spend billions of dollars. Billions is what it would take. We got to spend billions of dollars providing hearings and allowing motions and gathering evidence. And you know what? On that basis, folks, you'll never get them out. I just had a sign come up about my hand gestures. You'll never get them out. Which is exactly what Democrats want. They want them here, and who was it who recently admitted that? But they want them here. Most Democrats don't admit that. And sadly, most Republicans don't bother to say to the American people, these folks are invading your country because you are not good enough for them and you do not assure them the power guarantees that they need. And they believe that by bringing in these illegal aliens, they will owe them politically. And once they are able to vote, or even if they can't vote legally, they get them to the voting booth, they will guarantee that they get and keep power and ultimately gain hegemony over this country as a one-party state. That's what they want. They want America to be like California, like Massachusetts, like Vermont, like Maine, like Illinois, like Maryland. They want America to be a one-party state. They want to be able to affect their weird, sick, depraved, degenerate policies on our entire country. They want to force them on our entire country. The same way Maryland said to parents, oh, you want to opt out of the sexualization of your children? And when they found that parents opted out, they said, well, then we're not going to allow you to opt out. We're going to force you to have your children. That's what they want. They want to be able to force on us their sick vision, their dystopian vision of what America should be. And they think, apparently, that the way to get their policies across to the American people is by cursing. Which, again, deplorables, garbage, ignorant people who carry around their Bibles and cling to their Bibles and their guns. This is what they think of us. This is what they think of the American people. They don't like us. They don't like Americans. They don't like America. They don't like America as a constitutional republic. They don't like America as a Judeo-Christian nation. They don't like America as a free market nation. Okay? They don't like America as a nation of families as God ordained them. They don't like any of that. They hate all of that. And so they hate America as presently constituted. The America they love is the America they haven't yet created. The America they love is the America they want. And they want that America to be a Marxist socialist nation. They want that America to be a nation that forces perverse sexuality upon its people, including its children. They want that America to be a pure democracy in which once they have a majority, they can force on people anything they want. That's what they really want. They don't want America as a constitutional republic founded on Judeo-Christian principles and values. They don't want that at all. In fact, let me just give you one example. Now, I know it's anecdotal, but I really believe this expresses what they think. Here again, I don't know these pop stars. You don't know who this woman is, Jennifer Coolidge. I guess the Minecraft movie and whatever. But she just got an award from some homosexual group. And she said, in speaking and receiving the award, she said, she didn't use the word homosexual. I'll use that word. I think she used the phrase LGBT people are superior to heterosexual people. I kid you not. She said they're superior. She said because heterosexual people, she said, are more self-conscious. She said, whereas I think the sexual deviants, I call them, she called them gay men and women, the sexual deviants, so they let loose and have a blast. In other words, they're depraved and degenerate and they'll do anything. They know how to have a really good, really fun time, and they're really original. They're a superior group of people. Now, that's what they really think. I think that's what this whole leftist cabal believes. See, they believe that adherence to Judeo-Christian values and principles of sex and marriage being sex being between only one man and one woman in the bonds of holy matrimony, that heterosexuality is normal and that all else is abnormal. And yes, I know, YouTube, don't censor me. Don't censor me. Facebook, don't censor me. But homosexuality is abnormal. It is not normal. Gender confusion is not normal. These things are moral and spiritual and mental and emotional departures from normality. But this is what they want for the American people, because they think that sexual profligacy and perversion is superior to adhering to certain moral standards. They think the moral standards are antiquated, old fogey, old-fashioned. You're stilted. You're not authentic. You're not authentic unless you're trying to convince a 3-year-old that they have a different gender identity than what the doctors guessed and the parents imposed on them. You're not an authentic person unless you're trying to convince a 4 or 5-year-old that they're really born in the wrong body. Now that's the way they really think. And that's what they want for our country. They're superior. And they don't know they're going to bust hell wide open if they don't repent and turn from that wickedness, because that's all it is. It is pure wickedness. But let me come back to this issue, because this is not, folks, this is not an unimportant issue. This issue of the Democrats decided, we know how we're going to reach people. We're going to use as much profanity as we can, because when we do that, we're really going to, that's really going to move them more in our direction, because they think we're stupid. But here's number 2. And folks, this is a profoundly important spiritual point. And this is a point for you Christians to remember too. It's a point for the president to remember as well, President Trump. Jesus said, what comes out of the mouth defiles a person, because what comes out of the mouth goes into the heart. And he said, what comes out of the mouth also reveals what is already in the heart. He said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. A filthy mouth is indicative of a filthy heart. Now, I didn't say that. Jesus did. I didn't come up with that. I should say Jesus did. I am repeating it because it's the truth. And I know some of you Christians will say to me, well, I slip up every now and then. Well, slipping up every now and then is certainly not acceptable, but it's not the same as having a life in which you're strategizing to curse more because you think somehow that's going to be more effective and more authentic. It is indicative of a wicked, sinful heart. That's why the Word of God tells us, let no corrupt communication proceed from your mouth. Here we go. Ephesians 4:29. Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. Now, you're not going to go to hell for cursing, okay? People are going to go to hell for refusing the sacrifice that Jesus made for our sin, for all of them. Sins of thought, sins of word, and sins of deed. But that is not to say that cursing is not a sin. It is. But these people, and by the way, in the article, President Trump started this process. Oh, please. First of all, I thought Trump was the paradigm of all that is evil. Why in the world would you be emulating President Trump? He started it, now you're going to follow it, and that somehow, but somehow he's the epitome of all evil. And these people, they're so far behind that they think they're ahead. You know what I mean? So far behind in the race that they think they're ahead because they don't see anybody out in front of them. That's because they're so far behind. I mean, look, President Trump shouldn't curse either. And in my years of ministry, I've met plenty of Christians who slip up and curse, plenty of them. But it's not a good thing. But that's different than committing oneself to doing it. That's demonic. Let me just tell you this story about my salvation. When I began to read the Bible, for those of you who've heard my story, when I began to read the Bible in September of 1976, not with a view to getting saved and not with a view to getting to know God, but with a view to educating myself on the Bible as one of the great books. It was an intellectual exercise as far as I was concerned. But as I began to read the Bible, and I wouldn't have described it this way then because I didn't even have the Christian language or vocabulary to express it. But as I began to read it, I started to come under conviction. Here's the first conviction I had. The first conviction I had. Now I'm not saved. I haven't surrendered my life to Jesus Christ. But here's the first conviction I had. When I curse and use the Lord's name in vain, if God is real, He's listening to me and I am personally offending Him. I kid you not, folks. That was the first conviction I had. And here again, it wasn't, okay, I'm going to serve the Lord. I want to be saved. It was just the realization the stuff coming out of my mouth is serious. If God is real, He's listening, and I'm offending Him. And at that point, I took this action. I started saying, well, every time I use God's name in vain, I'm going to apologize to Him for it. Now, here again, I couldn't say at that point that I'm even convinced that God is real on an intellectual level. But my heart, see, I know now in hindsight, my heart was coming under conviction. Because now I'm starting to act on the basis of what I'm reading. When God said, you shall not use the name of the Lord your God in vain, it was suddenly, whoa, and I'm using GD and I'm using Jesus Christ's name in vain. And I'm saying all kinds of other things as well. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe I shouldn't do that. So, like for all people who curse, it's a habit. It's a bad habit. And it was my habit. So I would still curse, but then I'd say, Lord, forgive me. Just like that. Lord, forgive me. And then say, I'm not going to do that anymore. Well, once I got saved, one of the things God did for me, now He didn't do this in every area of my life, so don't get me wrong. I wasn't somehow made the perfect specimen of Christianity, in a moment, but I was changed on the inside and made perfect on the inside in a moment, because when you're born again, you're a new creation in Christ Jesus. But all my old ways of thinking and habits and speaking and all that didn't go away immediately, because I had to then, according to Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, I had to be transformed by the renewing of my mind. But God miraculously took cursing away from me. I mean, miraculously. Folks, I can say, now I'm not sitting here telling you, I have never said or done anything wrong in the almost, it's not quite 40 years. Well, actually, it's not quite 40 years. You know what? Next year, in 2026, I will celebrate 50 years as a Christian. 50 years as a Christian. I cannot say, well, I've never said or done anything wrong in my 50 years as a Christian. If I said that to you, I'd be lying to your face. But I can say this. Since I became a Christian, I have never cursed, not one time in my life, not once. Not once. And it's not because, pat me on the back, everybody. I am so good. Don't you just see how good I am? No. Because I just said to you, I can't tell you I've never said or done anything wrong in my 50 years as a Christian. I'd be lying to you. But God took that away from me, and it never came back. I mean, I've never been tempted to curse. It just doesn't cross my mind. Now, may have been times when I repeated a bad word. I can't even recall a time, because usually if there's a bad word, I'll give the initial or maybe spell the word if I think I need to give something, somehow give emphasis to it. And that's, if I've ever done that, that's been a rarity. I'm just in the back of my mind thinking, have I ever done that? And even that, I know I've never even spelled out the most heinous words one can think of. But I don't even, God took it from me. And I really believe God took it from me to say, son, you've been cleansed down on the inside. And I did the cleansing. E.W. Jackson didn't do the cleansing. Jesus did the cleansing. And you've been made a new creation in Christ Jesus. So while I can't say I've never said or done anything wrong, I can tell you this. I certainly haven't lived a life committed to doing and saying wrong things. I've lived a life committed to not doing or saying wrong things. Because God has changed my heart. You know, there's old songs, there's the things I used to do, I don't do anymore. The places I used to go, I don't go anymore. The things I used to say, I don't say anymore. Because I've been changed. I said all that simply to say, the Democrat Party is revealing to you the filth and the uncleanness in their hearts by actually committing to living a life of profanity and expressing themselves with it as a measure of their authenticity. I went for gun training one time and was in this particular class. One of the early gun training classes I took when I was, first really getting serious about carrying, and I wanted to go beyond, just the basic safety courses and all that. I really wanted to do some dynamic gun training, and I was in a class with a guy who was, this guy's good. This guy, he was quick on the draw. He knew how to use everything. Shotguns, semi-automatic rifles, ARs, AK-style weapons, pistols, all of it. And he started the class with all of this profanity. Just letting it rip. And I sat there and listened to him for about 5-10 minutes. And you all probably will believe this, because if you've been listening to me, you probably know I'm one of these people who I'm willing to speak up. I don't just do that when I'm on stage. I don't just do that when I'm in front of the camera. It's just the way God wired me. I interrupted him and said, let me ask you a question. I said, is the whole class going to involve the use of all this profanity? Is that really necessary? And you could hear a pin drop. I'm trying to remember how many of us were in that class. I'm going to guess maybe 10, 15 people. Yeah, I think about 10 or 15 people. I don't think it was quite 20, maybe 10, 15 people. You could hear a pin drop. He looked at me. He said, yes. He said, because I think the profanity makes the class more effective. And I thought to myself, you poor misguided soul. You know, there are people who believe that. That's how the Democrats, I guess that's what they think. And I said to him, I said, well, I'm a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I'm telling you, you're wrong. You don't need that to be effective. And he just kind of looked at me and smirked and went right on with the class. But I tell you what, now your first thought, well, did you stay in the class? I did. And you know what? He stopped cursing. Now, he didn't stop completely, but I tell you what, he didn't do as much after I challenged him. And look, as I said, nobody's going to go to hell for cursing. People are going to go to hell because they refused the sacrifice that God provided for their sin, whatever those sins were. If people were going to go to hell for cursing, I'd already been there, because I certainly did my share before the Lord took it from me. And people aren't going to go to hell for homosexuality. They're not going to go to hell for transgenderism. They're not going to go to hell for lying. They're not going to go to hell for cheating. They're not going to go to hell for adultery. They're not going to go to hell for fornication. They're not going to go to hell for murder. People are going to go to hell because they did not accept the forgiveness of their sins that was offered through Jesus Christ's substitutionary sacrifice on the cross for them. His going down into Sheol for them. His resurrection from the dead for them. If they don't accept that, then guess what? They've got to pay for their own sin. And they're going to. So I don't ever want you to get the idea that, I'm somehow, condemning everybody who curses to hell. I'm not condemning anybody to hell, because that's not my job anyway. I'm providing the good news of a way out of hell. So I'll tell you, I'll end this with a little story. I was walking in the neighborhood. This is when we lived in another town, and it was a development. But I was walking through the neighborhood, and on my way up, that's my sort of my exercise walk. And on my way up, I could hear some guys at a construction site I was passing. I don't know what they were doing exactly. They might have been building a house there, because the development was brand new when we moved into it. And over the years, they kept expanding. So that might have been what they were doing, but because I can't remember the details on that. But I could hear them from a block or half block away, just cursing. Just lighting it up. And it just irritated me, because when I'm walking like that, I'm out praying and meditating on the things of God and talking to God about various things. The Lord spoke some wonderful things to me in some of those walks. And it just irritated me. I said, well, when I get up there, I'm going to tell them, do you all have to let loose all that profanity? And as I was getting closer, the Lord spoke to me. And again, not audibly, but spoke to my heart. And I know when God speaks to me. And God said, don't do that. And I heard that, and I thought, okay. So what I did was, they weren't paying attention to me. I just walked by like they weren't even there. I didn't say a thing. And as I kept walking, the Lord ministered to me. He said, their problem is not profanity. He said, their problem is that they don't know me. Instead of criticizing them for their profanity, why don't you show them my love? I thought, wow. Thank you, Lord. I walked up. It probably took me about, 5 to 10 minutes, maybe not even 10, to finish the distance I was walking away, and then I would turn around and go back. So I just basically walk in a circle. And I had my route mapped out, and so on my way back, instead of going by, they were still talking, still doing their thing, and I stopped and walked over to them, but they were probably 10, 15 feet off the sidewalk. And I said, hey, fellas, how you doing? And they said, great, kind of looked at me. I said, what are you all building? And they told me whatever it was. I said, well, I'm Bishop Jackson. I'm a minister. I just wanted to come and say hello and let you all know the Lord loves you. And I said, I'd love to pray for you. I said, can I pray for you all? They looked at each other, and a couple said, yeah, by all means, preacher, pray for us. I prayed for them, and man, I walked away, and they were smiling and happy, and the Lord said, now see, you made a lot more impact by doing that than you would have made by going up and telling them to stop cursing, because they would have gotten angry that you had the nerve to come criticize them. Now instead, they're happy because you came and you showed them my love. About 2 weeks later, one of my church members said to me, Bishop, were you at a construction site over in your neighborhood and stopped to talk to some guy? I said, I sure did. He said, I know one of those guys. He told me about that. And I told him, I said, well, my pastor's name is Bishop Jackson. And he said, Bishop Jackson? He said, yeah. He said, well, that was your pastor? He said, yeah. The guy ended up visiting our church. So I just don't want you all to think that I'm being, holier than thou and, you're cursing and you're going to go to hell. And no, but what I'm pointing out is, and those guys didn't do what the Democrat Party's done. The guys didn't sit around and say, you know what, let's use as much profanity as we can. They were just doing what people do. They were doing what I had done. I didn't think about it. It was just a habit. My daddy cursed until he got saved. I cursed. I remember a woman coming to my house. I wasn't there. I came home. My father told me about it. But she came and said, I heard your son up the street, and he was just using all kinds of profanity. When I got home, my son said, I'll never forget the woman. She said, Miss Shelby came by and told me she heard you up the street using profanity. And I just kind of looked at my father thinking, oh, my goodness, I'm in trouble. But you know what? My father was never a hypocrite. He said, I know you hear it around me. He said, son, but you gotta know where you're talking, who you're talking to, and because it's really not a good thing. And left it at that. He didn't scream at me about it. He didn't get angry with me about it. Because how could he? Because I learned it from him. But you know what? I learned to use my mouth for purity from the Lord. And these Democrats, who are they learning to use profanity from? Who do you think is teaching them? The devil. Well, I didn't mean to spend all that time on that, but I think you just had a half decent sermon. So we need to pray for these people, because these people really are being demonically influenced. When have you ever heard of a political party sitting around saying, I know what we need to do. We need to use more profanity and curse words and drop the F-bomb more. And everybody say, that's it. That's the answer. And the only person I'm sure cheering them on is the devil and those who are imbued likewise. Because there's nothing in him but filth. And all that can come out of him is filth. And all that can come out of people who are following the devil, whether they're conscious of it or not, all that can come out of them is filth. I hope the Democrat Party just breaks up and some reasonable, rational, decent people. Like I just saw one guy, I forget where he's from, another guy just left the Democrat Party, said he just couldn't take it anymore. But this is over the issue of crime. But I hope the people who still got a modicum of decency in them finally say, you know what, enough. Let's start a party that can appeal to the American people on the basis of decency and rationality. Yeah, maybe we have a little bit different view on what the government should be doing and how the government should be spending its money and these kinds of things. But we certainly don't believe that the government ought to be promoting homosexuality, promoting transgenderism, promoting this stuff to children, promoting the killing of unborn babies, making that a cause célèbre or raison d'etre for our very existence. We believe we ought to be maybe focusing on how can we be a blessing and a help to the working people of America and help make their lives better, get government out of the way so that they can build the kinds of lives for themselves that they want to. I mean, maybe I'm fantasizing now. Maybe I'm fantasizing that there could be a center-left party like that. Because I think the Democrat Party maybe of the 70s might have been more like that. The Democrat Party of Bill Clinton may be more like that. Still morally depraved as a man, but still. I don't know. Maybe I'm fantasizing, but I tell you one thing. This thing that they've got now is an abomination, and it needs to end. I love a two-party system because I think it's good that there's a debate, and I think it's good that people have differing ideas. But frankly, I'm not interested in debating the devil. I'm interested in defeating him. God bless everybody. I got to go. I'm way over. My goodness gracious. I hope you all forgive me. You know what to do. Stand up, step up, speak up, and refuse to back up because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit because we are on God's side. God bless everybody.